How to determine if a house is worth flipping. In this video, you're going to learn the exact checklist that we use to determine if a house is flip worthy or one you should run from, and fast. Are you wondering if a house is a deal or a disaster? Most people guess. Smart investors don't. In this video, I'm going to show you how we size up any property fast before wasting time, money, or energy. If you've ever said to yourself, I think this might be a deal, well, this video is for you. Did you notice as soon as you bought that car that everybody on the road seemed to have the same car all of a sudden? You see it every place, right? And some people had the audacity to buy the same exact color as you. Those cars were always there. You just didn't see it because your reticular activating system, it's a real thing, wasn't activated, meaning that you weren't focusing on the things that were already in front of you. But the minute you started to focus on your car, your brain started to see all the similar cars in your market, and you saw them. Crazy, right? When you're shopping for real estate, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they look for anything and everything, and they don't even know what they're actually looking for. If you can dial in what I call your buy box, it's the most valuable thing you can do as a real estate investor. If you start to dial in what you're looking for, you'll reduce houses from tens of thousands and thousands to hundreds and maybe even just dozens that you're looking for. The more you refine your buy box, the more you're going to see it and know what it is when you see it. So you're not guessing if a house is worth flipping. You're going to look at that and say, now I know. Now I can run the numbers because this is what I'm looking for in my buy box. So what is a buy box? A buy box is a house that you want to stick with. If you're a new flipper, I'm going to strongly recommend that you stick with a first-time home buyer price point to start off with. You can usually determine this in your area by going on Redfin or Realtor.com or Zillow and finding what the median house price of a sale of houses in your neighborhood is. Then go 10 to 20% below that number. That will usually put you in the price point of first-time home buyers. Now, I want you to start saying, what would a first-time home buyer be looking for? Most of them are happy with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, maybe a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home. That doesn't mean you only look for 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes. I mean, you look for 3-bedroom, 1-bath homes that have the ability to upgrade or add on an extra bathroom, right? If you can improve a house by adding an extra bathroom, that adds more value. Or maybe it's a 4-bedroom, 1-bath. You can convert to a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. So be open to those ideas, but find those houses. Usually about a 1,500 square foot is the size you want to target. Then I want you to target a house that don't need a lot of work. You don't want to go into something that needs a tremendous amount of work to get started with. You want to find something that maybe is more of a cosmetic flip. It's something you can put some paint into, you can put some new vanities in the bathrooms, new tiles, new flooring, new kitchen cabinets, and put that thing back on the market and sell it for top dollar. You want to get really specific with things like neighborhood. What neighborhood are you looking for this size house to be in? And be careful because sometimes one street over is an entirely different neighborhood. Look for school districts. Again, sometimes one street over can be a completely different school district. The school district lines have to end someplace, right? So they do, and when they do, it can be that close to your property. In our town in upstate New York, there's a town called Rotterdam and a city called Schenectady. The prices are very different one street over. In Rotterdam, the average price is about $250,000, where in Schenectady, the average price is about $175,000, and it's one street over. The school district in Rotterdam is a decent school district. The school district in Schenectady is a city school and not so good. So consequently, people don't want to send their kids to a city school. They want to go more to the school that's in the Rotterdam area, which is either Schelma or Mahanassen. That just happens to be what it is. And so people are looking for that area and that school district, and that makes it more valuable. So look for those areas and say, where do I want to be? What price point do I want to be? What size house do I want to be? What kind of repairs do I want to focus on? Even what street do I want to be on, and what town do I want to be in? The more specific you can get your buy box, the better chance you're going to actually see it when it pops up in front of you. So start with having a good buy box. That's going to help you narrow your focus so you see what you're looking for with your reticular activating system. There are some things I would avoid if I were you when you're trying to find a house that's a good house to flip. I would avoid flood zones. Can I tell you a story? Early in our career, Amber and I bought a home that was actually in a flood zone, but we did not check and did not know it. Now, ironically, the address was River Road. I probably should have been tipped off that it was in a flood zone. We had a very difficult time selling that house. As a matter of fact, we sold the house twice, and as soon as they learned it was in a flood zone, they backed out of the contract. 2 different people, 2 different times. I had to literally figure out a way to get that house out of the flood zone, and I was able to by filling in the basement. It's a long story. It took a long time to figure it out, but I filled in the basement on the house so that it was didn't have an elevation problem anymore, and now it was in a much less risky flood zone. And long story short, we sold it for the 3rd time and actually made a profit on the house. Not as much as we would have liked to the first time, but we learned our lesson about flood zones. I would be cautious of busy roads. People buy houses, especially in today's market with low inventory, pretty much any place, but a lot of people don't want to raise their kids or their pets on a busy road. So you tend to sell those houses for a little bit less than in a nice, quiet neighborhood. So be a little cautious of busy roads. I'm not saying don't buy, I'm just saying be very cautious of it. Be careful of trying to flip a house in a rural location. Look, I grew up in a small town upstate New York with 2,000 people. And ironically, I flipped only one house in that neighborhood out of 1,250 plus houses over the past 20 years. Because rural is difficult. You have less buyers in a rural area. So be cautious of rural locations. Be careful of properties that are condemned. I'm not saying don't buy the house condemned, especially if it fits in your buy box, but be cautious to find out what the real code enforcement problems are. Why did they actually shut it down? There was a house one time that was condemned, and we found out later after going under contract to buy the house that a few years before there was a huge landslide behind the house and some people lost their foundations. Now the town had since come through and fixed it, but nobody would sign off on it. And we got very nervous and backed out of that deal and lost a $5,000 deposit because of it. But at the end of the day, had we done our homework in advance, we probably wouldn't have put a contract because it was condemned, not because of the house, but because of the land around the house. Something out of our control. Now, if you go in and find the house is condemned because there's mold, great, you can fix that. Or because there was significant, flooding damage, great, you can fix that. If the thing that made it condemned is fixable, hey, that's great. That's what you want. You want something that says condemned so other people are scared and don't go near it, and you can go near it, as long as it fits in your buy box. Again, along the lines of a landslide, be careful of any major environmental issues. If you have a tremendous amount of mold, it can be fixed, but it can be costly. If you have a leaky basement, make sure that it's actually fixable without having to spend a tremendous amount of money. If you have sewage leaks or septic leaks, make sure that it can be fixed and repaired economically. Make sure it's not something that has a big problem. For instance, we have a property right now that's a long-term rental that has an irregular septic system because it's right next to the city wells, over 100 wells that feed the city, and they won't let us put a certain new septic system. We have to have an old, expensive one. So long story short, be extra careful about heavy environmental issues. And lastly, I would avoid high crime areas. There's really just not a lot of payback unless you want to be the kind of person that owns property in those areas and you're okay with it. You're not going to get great appreciation. You're going to get some cash flow. You're going to be chasing rent, and you're going to be in dangerous situations on a regular basis. So I would strongly recommend, if that's not your buy box, that you stay out of high crime areas. When you're deciding if a house is worth flipping for you or not, you have to decide how much risk do you want to bite off? What's your appetite for risk? Cosmetic is pretty simple, right? But when you get into large structural problems, that's a lot more. And you have to have a very good appetite and ability to navigate the emotions that go along with doing a high-end risky investment. For instance, I have flipped houses where I had to replace all 4 walls in the basement. Because my appetite for risk is greater than most, I was okay doing it because I bought the house cheap enough. I knew I could still make money, and we did. But most people, I would not recommend that type of a deal for. So you have to decide as you're looking at a house, is it worth it to me to do this deal? Is the risk worth the reward? I would say that those deals you can do once you have more experience under your belt, because experience matters. And the more experience you have, the more appetite for risk you're probably going to have. Be careful of funky layouts. If you have a really small bedroom or several small bedrooms, you might not want to buy that house if there's no room to expand. If you have an odd kitchen that doesn't really function very well, be very careful because resale can be very difficult in a house like that. If you have too small of square footage, if you're less than 800 square feet for a house, a lot of people don't want to buy that house. I'd be very careful of going near a house that's small unless you can add square footage to that property and get well over 1,000 square feet. I'd be cautious, but also be careful of houses that are too big. We flipped a house one time that was a 5-bedroom, 6-bath home in a neighborhood that was all 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes. That was our buy box, but we thought it was in our neighborhood, so it was still our buy box. It wasn't. We ended up actually losing money on that flip because we had a really hard time. It cost more than we expected because it was so much bigger and so many more bathrooms and so many more bedrooms to deal with. By the time we sold it and calculated our costs, we hadn't made nearly as much money as we thought because we stepped out of our buy box and tried to do something different. So be careful of houses that are too big. They don't always sell square footage wise what the house next door sells for with square footage. If one house next door is $100 a square foot, it doesn't mean that house that's 3,000 square foot more is going to sell for $100 a square foot for those square footage as well. Hope that makes sense. All right, let's talk about hoarder houses for a minute. Hoarder houses are houses, well, you've seen the shows, they're full of crap, sometimes literally. But houses like that, don't let them scare you. The only difference between a house that was last remodeled in the 1970s and a house that was remodeled 10 years ago, but is a hoarder house, the only difference is about $2,000 or $3,000 to have all the stuff removed and a couple of dumpsters. That's the only difference. You've got to gut both of them and repaint and start from scratch. So don't let a clean, old house that was remodeled 30 years ago think that it's any better of a house than a house that's a hoarder house. All you have to do is clean it out and you're right back to square one. So it's about $3,000 more. Next, I want you to be careful of the architectural style of the home. For instance, not everybody likes Victorians. Not everybody likes Tudor-style homes. And not everybody likes historic homes. Historic homes have their own set of complications when dealing with the historical society, so I'd be very cautious of those. You're going to have a lot smaller buying pool on Victorians and Tudors and historic homes, so be cautious walking into those because they're not quite as lucrative as you think on the outside. They might look really cool to you, but they look cool to the masses. That's what really is most important. So here's some red flags that will kill a deal before it even starts. Title issues. When you're buying a house, it has to have a clean title, if you're doing this right. And your lawyer or your title company should easily be able to tell you if there's title issues or title problems in the house or things they can't clear. Old mortgages that show up, old people that have a right to say they own the house. All these things are important that might be deal killers before you even close on the house. Your disclosures from the seller. Just because they give you disclosures doesn't mean that they're actually true. Was there work that was done that was never permitted? Because that could become your problem when you own the house. You go to flip a house and you tear out a wall and you realize they did some plumbing work they should never have done that was illegal. You're going to have to fix that. And if an inspector sees it, you could be fined because now you own the property. You may find as soon as you get in there, that property is uninsurable. I'm not saying these things to scare you. I'm just saying when you ask yourself the question, is this house worth flipping or not? There's a lot more things to consider than just saying, do the numbers work? The numbers are a huge part of it, but you have to make sure all these other things line up first before you even get to the numbers. Speaking of the numbers, in order to know if a house is worth flipping, if it fits in your buy box and everything else checks the boxes, you have to know how to evaluate the deal. And I want to share with you a video next that'll tell you exactly how we evaluate every deal that we buy, and we buy over 100 deals a year still. We're very active in the market, and it's taken us 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears to put this training together, and I want to give it to you today for free. So watch this next video. If the video is not here below me or right here, look in the description, and the link will be down below, and it's my gift to you.